Welcome to PeopleSoft Now. I'm Dan Iverson. Today, we'll listen in on a conversation with Paco Aberwan, our Senior Vice President, and Russell Broom, Vice President, PeopleSoft Strategy and Development. They both just wrapped up PeopleSoft's only in-person conference of the year, Reconnect Live at Blueprint 4D. Paco's keynote from the conference introduced the latest innovations from PeopleSoft, highlighting the theme of increased productivity across user experience and operational management improvements. The PeopleSoft functionality features shown at the conference centered around the PeopleSoft landing page, smart prompts and dropdowns, work management, OpenSearch, AI, customizations, and so much more. Now, it's your turn to hear about where we are investing in PeopleSoft, what's driving that investment strategy, and what you can expect next from Oracle. Let's go listen in.
Hey, Paco, thanks for taking the time to talk today. It's been a really busy year.
Nice to be here, Russell.
All right, let's start with the big picture. Every year we post a blog about App Unlimited support extension. The customers I talk to still want to know and are asking questions about continuing to run their business on PeopleSoft well into the future. They want to know what the long-term investment in PeopleSoft is safe, and what would you like to tell customers about Oracle's commitment to PeopleSoft and why we're continuing to invest in PeopleSoft?
Yeah, so it's nice to be in a position where we are now, almost 20 years after we announced Applications Unlimited, which is when Oracle made the decision to basically to announce that the policy that we're going to continue to invest in the applications that are running our customers' businesses. And so that policy hasn't changed in the almost 20 years that we've been operating under it. In 2006, Oracle made a commitment to continue to invest in PeopleSoft and eBusiness Suite and the other major applications until such times that our customers were no longer using those to run their business. And we've been doing that for the last 20 years, and that hasn't changed. The one thing that we did shift is the model around how we commit to supporting those products. And we have what we call our rolling 10-year support policy. Which means that we have 10 years of support on PeopleSoft. Every year we review that to see if our plans have changed, and we still don't have any plans as long as we still don't have any plans to stop investing in PeopleSoft, we extend that a year every year, and we've just done that again this year. So PeopleSoft systems are safe. However, that doesn't necessarily mean we want you to continue to run PeopleSoft forever. So that's not the intent of the policy. The intent of the policy is to give you continue to make sure we're providing value to our customers while you're running PeopleSoft. But we still do expect our customers to move to cloud applications when they're ready to.
That's great. Let's dig a bit more into investments, because that's another question I always get. At Blueprint, you laid out the future path of PeopleSoft. You categorized our investments, talked about our overall objectives. Can you share some of that so that customers hear firsthand what we're trying to accomplish overall in PeopleSoft?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things we do in the products, and what we try to do is make sure that our customers and that our internal teams understand what we're trying to achieve, right? And as I talk to customers across every industry, running all the different product areas we have, the one theme that's pretty consistent across all of them is that they're trying to do more with less, right? And they're oftentimes they have the same budget or less budget than they had before, but they're being asked to do more things faster. So this idea of making our customers more productive and increasing productivity is really where we've been focusing, and where the features that we have that we've been coming out with this year and we're continuing to invest in are focused. And when I look at productivity, we're looking at productivity across three kind of dimensions. One is the productivity of the end users. So how do the people that are using our applications to record business transactions, to make decisions, how do we make their jobs easier and more productive? How do we make the lines of business more productive? How do we allow them to do more in procurement, in asset management, in payroll, in the various functional areas and departments that our applications support? How do we make them more the business more productive. And then finally, for the teams that are supporting PeopleSoft, the operations teams, the teams that are doing patching, that are doing scaling, they're doing backups, that are basically running PeopleSoft, the IT teams. How do we make them more productive? How do we allow them to do more, faster, better with fewer people, or with less time, so that they can spend their time doing things that are more value add? So that's what we've looked at in terms of productivity in the applications.
So it sounds like we're placing a lot of focus and enhancing, improving the end user experience in People Tools. What are some of the key investments in that area that you really want to highlight to customers that they need to know about?
Yeah, so we're always looking for productivity and modernization in the user experience, and part of that is making it look nice and look appealing and look modern, so that our users have confidence that they're using an application that's not old and outdated. But more and more, we're focused on how does that user experience, help them do their job easier. And so there's a number of things that we've done, and delivered, either directly in People Tools 8.6.2, which has come out recently, or in the applications, or oftentimes in a combination of the two, working in unison. So one of the examples, and this is somewhat of a tactical example, but it can have a high impact on the applications, is what we call smart prompts or smart lookups. And effectively, what that feature is delivered in People Tools 8.6.2. And what we've done is, anytime there's a lookup on a page, think about like the currency code, or the state, if you're selecting a state, instead of just selecting from a list of states and scrolling through to find your state that you're selecting almost every time, we take the states that in this case, states that you've used the most recently or the most frequently, and we put those up at the top as basically suggested or relevant, the relevant selections. So again, that saves a few seconds, maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds of time. But now, when you look at that across all the different places we have lookups and prompts, on all the different pages we have them, times the amount of time that's, especially some of these power users, are in the application, across the hundreds or thousands of users of the application for a particular customer of ours, across a year, that 7 seconds can add up to days, weeks, months worth of productivity time across the workforce. So that's an example of a tactical thing that, when you upgrade People Tools, your application is going to have this smart prompt capability. You don't have to do anything. A bigger example for us is what we call our landing page, and that's a more deliberate shift away from what we've traditionally done in PeopleSoft, which are the home pages. We've delivered home pages we deliver multiple home pages that are role specific, and they're really focused almost exclusively on navigation, right? There's the tiles on the home page. You go to the home page and you figure out where you want to go from there. So the home pages are, number one, they're starting to look a little dated. We introduced those with Fluid in 2014, I believe. So we wanted to make them a little more modern. We wanted to give our customers more control over the visualization and how they are stylistically. And that comes with People Tools 8.6.2. Our customers are now able to fully control all the styling of a particular homepage. We've taken it as several steps further than that, though, with the application content that we're delivering, and that's what we're really calling a landing page. And so the landing page idea is that instead of different homepages per role, or one homepage per role now, everyone logs into the same homepage, and we dynamically resolve the content that's relevant for that individual onto that single landing page, which the 8.6.2 gives us. The most important part, though, is not just that it's a single nice looking landing page, but we've started to take some of the ideas that we had around work centers as a way to tell the end user what are the things they needed to do, what are the actions they should be thinking about taking now that they're in our application, what are the things that they had started that they hadn't completed, what are some of the announcements that are important for them, and we push that content dynamically into sections like, for example, a continuous section, where they can it'll tell them it'll prompt them, basically, here's the things we think you might want to do and maybe should do based on business conditions. And all that is controlled, or is managed by our customers, they can tailor it. They can determine what's the content, what drives that content, what section does it go to, who sees it, how long does it last. It's kind of like the idea of a work list a little bit, except it's a much more natural way because it's part of the sections of the landing page. That that will be coming out in the form of a common component called the notification publisher, which is part of the notification composer, and the application content in the application images that come out on 862 will have all of this content for these new landing pages for these notifications. So probably our biggest change in PeopleSoft, the PeopleSoft kind of user experience, overall user experience, since we introduced Fluid 10 years ago. So very excited for customers to get this. Hope that we get customers that are willing to take this step forward and really make some changes that'll, I think, please the users in terms of the being more modern, but also a much more effective, productive, and useful kind of framework for PeopleSoft as they get into the application and move around.
Great. So on the landing page, what do you feel that customers should do to help better prepare, or things to keep in mind if they're considering, adopting the PeopleSoft landing page?
Yeah, so if for customers that are thinking about, they've seen it. A lot of customers have seen it. We've put some demos out there. We've shown it in the conferences. So we have customers that are interested in it. The things that customers should do to prepare is, number one, you got to get it to 862. Again, what People Tools 862 delivers that's crucial is being able to. We took the sections that were delivered, the kind of idea of a homepage section that was delivered in 861, but it was very limited in terms of what you could do with it. The sections become the building blocks now of the new kind of home pages or landing page, if you will. So you need 862 in order to have the stylistic control. For example, we can now take what was a tile and make that tile represented as a link. So this concept of tiles and pages and sections, we keep, but what you used to think of as a tile, a section, or a home page can look completely different. We're delivering, so that's the 862. That's the baseline. You got to get to 862. I also strongly recommend that you take our application functionality related to this that's coming in the first 862 images in 2025 for PeopleSoft, both for FSCM and HCM. And what those are going to do is deliver templates so that you can use what we've delivered. If you don't want to have to do all your own styling and come up with your own design, we've delivered templates both for the landing page, but also once you go from the landing page down into the application. If you're in an area, let's say a manager, and you have what is like, a lot of functions that a manager would use, we have restyled what we call dashboards, that second layer, in using the same technology now. So we're delivering all that content in the applications. Application images are coming out. That's also where the notification publisher is, that functionality. So really, it's the marriage of the two. My recommendation to get ready is look at what we've done, review the videos, get the plan to get to 862, and start to work within the organization to get buy-in on this shift to a single landing page versus a kind of a role-based tile-oriented home pages we've had in the past. And I think the users will love it. So I hopefully it'll be something that we get customers adopting as they move onto 862.
Why don't we switch gears and talk about search a little bit? We've invested a lot over the last couple of years in new indexes, new insight analytics, and more capabilities to help customers manage and maintain all those indexes. So all that investment, why do you feel indexes are important to PeopleSoft, and how do you see that evolving over time, given the recent updates?
Yeah, so the search indexes, I think, what our customers often see with search is they see the end function. So they'll see a global search, or they'll see our ability to do a keyword search using a search engine on a component and using configurable search. Those are very important kind of functional advances we've made using the search engine, using search as a tool, as a technology in order to deliver a functional capability to our end users. Hopefully everyone's seen the insights. I mean, obviously the insights are a big part of that, where we've taken the analytical capability of OpenSearch dashboard, that technology, and basically are using it to introspect the content of the indexes. So those are all capabilities that we've delivered that use the indexes. In order to make those more effective, we had to introduce real-time indexing, which allows our customers to keep the index data synchronized with the database. So there's no latency between if there's a transaction on the database, the index is updated. It's instantly in real time. So those are all investments we've made. What that's resulted in for us is that plus, those advances plus all the indexes we've built themselves is this data layer that sits outside of the database that is highly performant because the data is flattened in the form of all these indexes. It covers probably 75% of the business objects that are in our application. And it maintains all the data integrity the security, because of our need to do that with search and with the insights. So those indexes have the ability to make sure that the data that's being viewed by an individual is able to be viewed by them from a security standpoint. And when those indexes are queried effectively, it doesn't have any impact on the database. So it's not going to slow down online performance. So if you look at all those capabilities of what those indexes represent now, it's a very, very strategic capability for us going forward, and one that we're continuing to look at how do we exploit that? How do we leverage that? Now, in the world of AI and of data access becoming more and more important, we're looking to those indexes as the primary way of external data access. So any external process that needs to access data within PeopleSoft, if it's a query and not an update, our recommendation is go through the indexes. So they're very, very strategic. And so in that context and with that in mind, we did what I think is we'll see if it's the final step, but right now it feels like the final step of making those index kind of enterprise grade. And what we've done specifically with a combination of application changes and PeopleTools 862 is previously if setup data changed, so let's say you changed the description, a job function description, because that's not transactional, we weren't updating the indexes with that. And in some cases, because we didn't have timestamps on those records, even the incremental index wasn't updating that, which wasn't a huge deal necessarily for search. But now that we have so much dependence on these, we've gone and we've fixed all the indexing. We've changed some of the records in our application so that we are able to do incremental indexes. And with PeopleTools 862 now, our PeopleTools can detect when one of these setup tables or time-based records, with effective dating, for example, have changed, and it will automatically kick off an incremental index to update those indexes. So really, the indexes that we have should always be fully synchronized, fully up to date, even in those cases where it's setup or background data that's changed. So anyway, the result is a very powerful architectural component for PeopleSoft going forward, that if you're not using that today, you certainly should start.
Thanks for that update. Why don't we move to work centers? At Blueprint and also in a blog, we recently talked about how work centers has evolved to something called Work Center 3.0. It's taking our one-stop shop for the administrator and really adding a lot to it. We also introduced at Blueprint a concept of work management. Would you mind taking a few minutes and talking about work management and Work Center 3.0 and why it's important to our customers and PeopleSoft?
Yeah, so I've kind of broadly looked at the generations of work centers as 1.0 was our first start at those in Classic, and they introduced the idea that work centers introduced is really there's two concepts that were important. One is it was role based. It was for someone who does a particular job. That it was a collection of the navigation and all the information that they needed was one click away in a work center. So that was the first step. The second was what I consider the most strategic and important part of them. That is, when we talk to our customers, as a payroll administrator or the accounts receivable admin, they all, in order to keep the business flowing, they would generate queries and they would generate reports that listed exceptions that were happening in the business that they needed to go deal with, things that were pending, things that didn't go through, jobs that didn't run, and they would print those out and put them on their corkboard or on their whiteboard, and then they'd use that to figure out what's the work they needed to do in PeopleSoft. Well, we addressed that with the My Work component of WorkCenters, which was basically a dynamic query-generated conditional list of all those things that used to be on our corkboards. We've now put into My Work items in the WorkCenter. So that was why we did them. That was the important part of WorkCenters. That was WorkCenters 1.0. WorkCenters 2.0 is really moving those onto Fluid, starting to provide them mobilely, starting to provide some of the new functionality around them. But more or less similar to what they were on Classic, just now easier to use, more modern, more mobile. WorkCenters 3.0, I think, is the kind of that next set of functionality where we're really starting to reinvest in WorkCenters themselves. And the biggest piece of that investment that we've made is because the My Work is a dynamically generated list. It's looking at the conditions on a record and saying that is that something that should show up in this My Work item. The problem is if you had a team of people working on one set of items, if that wasn't something that you could resolve within one click of a button, that item stayed on the list. And now if you have 3 or 4 people in a team that were all working this list, no one knows whether someone else is already working on that, whether they've already addressed it, whether they've already taken an action. And so you had these items that were on there it was very hard for a team to work. My Work basically allows you that when you start working on one of these My Work items, it will assign that to you. It will take it off the unassigned list. So we can now see who's working on what. We track what actions have been done. And if no action's taken, it'll put it back onto it's all configurable, put it back onto the unassigned list. So it's a kind of a lightweight assignment capability, but that's still dynamic in nature. And I think it's going to be a game changer for WorkCenters. I think it's going to make WorkCenters way, way more useful. And I'm excited for customers to start using that and giving us some feedback on where we take that next. The other kind of major thing that we've done for WorkCenters, that we're doing for WorkCenters, that we're putting into the applications, is we're taking the insights and making them available within the WorkCenters, which is nice. But we're taking the next step in that we've taken the insight. We've built insight charts. We've put them into the My Work pages, so that you can now use the insight to see what is, if you have lots of items, say you have 1,000 items that are in the My Work exception list, you can see those broken down based on the graphics and visualizations we have. And we've tied them together so that you can actually filter. So you can now use the insight graphic inside the My Work template page to click on, let's say, a category or one of the bar charts, and it'll now filter the rows that are shown in the column, so you can now get to the work you want to do more effectively if you have a lot of work there. So that's going to be rolling out in application images over the next several application images. We're going to be putting some of those in there. Customers can do that themselves. Together, I'm calling that WorkCenters 3.0. So excited for everyone to see it.
Okay, well, I think we've pretty much covered user productivity, but what about core application functionality for the line of business? What would you like to tell everyone about what we're doing to help the line of business users be more productive in PeopleSoft?
Yeah, so with the line of business, it's all about taking input from our customers for the most part. I mean, there's some things that we're doing, obviously, that are happening in the industry where even though our customers aren't asking for it, we feel like we need to do it. But the main thing that we're doing is taking feedback from our customers on items that they're telling us how they can be more productive, areas that oftentimes that they've had to customize, and we're putting that into the application. So, today I don't intend to go through specific functional areas because they're very, very specific to a particular product. But the one thing I will say is that those of you who are using IdeaSpace, who are putting ideas in IdeaSpace, and more importantly, even than putting ideas in there, is voting on ideas. We are taking those and we're putting that into the product. And we every time we get together, we review the top 20-25 most highly voted on items, and we get those into the product. So look at what's coming. Look at our planned features and enhancements. You'll see that a lot of the features, the majority of the features that are being asked for to help drive productivity by our end users are coming into the product. So that's that. Without going into any of the specific details, that's what we're doing. A lot of good stuff there.
Okay, thank you. In today's world, every customer is looking at reducing cost. You hear it, all over the news. Everybody's trying to reduce costs. Customers always want to know, how can I reduce the cost and effort to maintain PeopleSoft? So, what are the investments you want everyone to hear that highlight what we're doing to help operation teams run PeopleSoft more efficiently?
Yeah, so the one that I'll call out, and there's a lot of things that we're doing here, tons. But the big one is around customizations, and we've had for the longest time we've struggled with how we know the customization, the cost associated with maintaining PeopleSoft, patching, taking new features in areas that you've customized represent one of the largest costs. But we also know that being able to customize PeopleSoft is one of the reasons that a lot of our customers selected PeopleSoft. Um, so we've introduced these frameworks like the page and field configurator and drop zones and frameworks like that that allow our customers to customize the application without actually customizing our code. So to do it in a way that is much less costly to take our maintenance, so they don't have to reapply them all. Part of the challenge, though, is this question of what's a customization? How many do I have? What's the count? Am I getting better? Where should I focus? And that is, that becomes seemingly a very easy question. It should be an easy answer. It never has been. So we're delivering a set of insights called customization insights that are part of 8.6. You need to have a PeopleTools 8.6.2. And we're marrying some new capabilities we have in Usage Monitor. And we're doing that not in where we've traditionally done these things, which is in like a PUM instance. You can bring this into your production instance. And so now, if you run these jobs, we will actually, you don't have to tell us what your customizations are anymore. We'll calculate what they are. So we determine what the customizations are. If you run the Usage Monitor, we can determine which customizations you're actually using and which ones you're not. If you use the Usage Monitor in your test system, whether you're running automation or doing manual testing, we can tell you which of these customizations that you have are being tested. And since we have all of the PUM information, we can tell you which product areas how often are the changes that the PeopleSoft team are delivering are impacting your customization. So we now allow you to really zero in on what are the customizations that are costing you the most. What are the customizations that you're not using that are costing you the most? What are the customizations that you're testing that you don't use, you don't need to test? And what are the customizations that you should be testing but you're not? And one of the more interesting kind of pieces of information we now have in the customization insights is we can look backwards and see where have there been the most conflicts, which customizations are effectively the most expensive for you to maintain. We can also look forward. So if you're on an image and you're going to go to three more images forward in your next update, we can tell you what are the products that you're going to have customization collisions and how many of those and what are those customizations. So I think having that visibility, being able to measure it and being able to put numbers to it is going to be really important for our customers. And it's going to allow us to then help start to take the next step of how do you manage them more effectively. So that's the big area. The other big area that we're focused on in terms of productivity is around all the lifecycle management capabilities we have with PeopleSoft Cloud Manager for those customers running on OCI. So those are probably two of the biggest investment areas we have to help the operations and lifecycle management teams.
Okay, thank you. Last but not least, at Blueprint, you called the last topic we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, generative AI. Gen AI is a hot topic in the industry, and I always get asked, what's PeopleSoft strategy around AI? Can you share your view on Gen AI as it relates to PeopleSoft and any investments we're making, and anything that customers need to think about who are interested in adopting Gen AI and PeopleSoft?
Yeah, so my answer here may not may not be what a lot of our PeopleSoft customers want to hear, but I want to make sure we're clear and you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, or in some cases what we're not going to do. we've made the decision that the investment in generative AI is going to be centered primarily on our cloud applications. The reason we're doing that is because it's a re-architecture in many ways to use these AI agent teams and these agentic services that are now possible with generative AI to start to automate tasks, to start to really change the whole nature of workflow and how we look at applications and how people interact with agent teams and applications in unison to drive more productivity. And so instead of going to all of our applications, all of our next generation cloud applications, our Fusion applications, as well as all of our Apps Unlimited applications and kind of re-architect those for generative AI, we've made the decision that if customers want applications that have generative AI they're built into them, then it's a good time for them to move to our cloud applications. We're putting a huge amount of investment there. We have a new AI studio that's really part of the fabric of our cloud applications that not only allows our development teams to build this capability, but allows our customers to do it as well. It's very, very powerful, all natively integrated in with all the models, the LLMs that they may want. So with PeopleSoft, we're not going to do that in the applications. However, our partners and customers can do some of that themselves. We have a lot of integration capabilities. We have a lot of customers and a lot of partners that are already using generative AI, using the OCI agent services that we have in OCI with PeopleSoft and doing some of that themselves. So they're certainly able and willing and able to do that. And there are some infrastructure components that we're going to be delivering in PeopleSoft in the future right now that we're looking at and planning that are going to make it a little bit easier to have PeopleSoft participate as a data source, for example, for some of this. So if we're going to have agent services and there are updates to PeopleSoft or content from PeopleSoft that's needed to participate in that, we want to make it easier for our customers to be able to do that, kind of build those solutions themselves. But at this point, our decision is that we're not going to build that. We're not going to build all that natively in PeopleSoft. If that's important to you as a customer, then either take a hard look at our cloud applications, or if it's not the right time to move there, talk to some of the partners we have that are building solutions and look at some of what we've done with OCI.
Okay. Well, thanks, Paco. This has been great. Thanks for the help getting the word out to all of our customers about our investment strategy and, of course, what's to come in the future with PeopleSoft. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. It's been great working with you and working with all of our great PeopleSoft customers. We have a great group of customers. We're doing great things in the product, and I'm excited to see what's in store for us next.
We've covered a lot of ground. And for everything that Paco and Russell discussed, there's even more to look forward to. You can find out more on the PeopleSoft information portal at peoplesoftinfo.com. Of course, you'll have another chance to dive deeper into more PeopleSoft topics at the Reconnect conference in October. Reconnect is a virtual event, so wherever you run PeopleSoft, you can interact with our global product development team and the full community of customers and partners. We'll see you there.
Good Sparky.